Welcome to episode 84 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the tales of Troy and the story of Another Argive Defeat. Day had dawned. Agamemnon bade his men don their armor, and he himself gird on his splendid cuirass, on which 10 rows of blushed metal alternated with 12 of shining gold and 20 of white tin. The part shielding the neck was worked in the shape of serpents, gleaming like rainbows. It was a gift from Cinyras, king of Cyprus. Then he fastened his sword to his shoulder by a strap buckled with gold. The scabbard was of silver, and the hilt adorned with golden studs. He took his curved shield, round which ran 10 circles of bronze, and on it sparkled 20 bosses of white tin. In the center, blazoned on the dark field of azure, was the head of the terrible Medusa, and the strap was in the shape of a purple dragon with 3 heads interlaced. On his head he set a helmet with 4 horns. Plumes of horsehair fluttered about it, and the crest nodded menacingly. Last, he gripped 2 great lances with points of luminous bronze, and thus he strode into battle. From heaven, Hera and Athene greeted the king with joyful thunder, and now the host sped forward. First, the foot soldiers crossed the trench. After them came the chariots, and all moved forward with deafening clamor. On the other side of the battlefield, the Trojans had occupied a hillock. Their leaders were Hector, Polydamas, Aeneas. Next in importance were Polybus, Agner, and Alcomus, the 3 sons of Antenor. Like a star shining out between the clouds on a dark night, Hector appeared now in the van, now in the rear of the host, and ordered the battalions. His brazen armor shone like a flash of lightning flung by Zeus. As reapers cut swaths in a field upright with grain, so Trojans and Achaeans, storming against one another, hewed their way through the mass of warriors. The kings were first to break through the ranks of the foe, and Agamemnon, plunging forward, struck down Prince Bianor and his charioteer. Then he threw himself on to the 2 sons of King Priam, Antiphus and his charioteer Isis. Antiphus he pierced with his sword. Isis he pushed from the chariot with his lance. Quickly he stripped them of their armor, and now he encountered the 2 sons of Antimachaeus, the Trojan prince, who, beguiled by Paris's gold, had dissuaded the others from surrendering home. The youths let the reins slip from their hands, crouched into the depths of the chariot, and pleaded for mercy. But Agamemnon, thinking of their father, slew one with his spear, and cut off the hands and head of the other. And the Argives on foot and chariot penetrated deeper and deeper into the ranks of the enemy, even as a fire lashed by the wind spread through the dense forest. Out of the turmoil and rivers of blood, Zeus himself guided Hector, shielding him from missiles, and the prince fled past the slope covered with fig trees to the grave of old King Ilus and on toward the city. But Agamemnon, his hands spattered with Trojan blood, pursued him with loud shouts. Near the beech tree of Zeus, not far from the Scaean gates, Hector and all those fleeing with him finally came to a stand, and Zeus sent Iris to command him to keep back as long as Agamemnon raged in the van, and to leave the fighting to others until the son of Atreus was wounded. Then the father of all gods would lead him to victory. Hector obeyed. He spurred his warriors forward to fresh onslaught, and the battle opened anew. Agamemnon rushed forward and again entered the lines of the Trojans and their allies. The first he came upon was Iphitus, son of Antenor, a great and valiant hero who had grown up in Thrace, reared by his grandfather, and had just wed when he left to battle in the land of his birth. Agamemnon's lance missed him, and the spear of Iphitus bent against the silver belt of his assailant. Swiftly, Agamemnon gripped the shaft, wrenched it from his opponent's head, and cut his throat with his own sword. Thus, Iphitus died fighting for his people, far from his young wife, and there was no one to look with pity on his body, stark in the sleep of death. Agamemnon took his armor and flourished his splendid spoils as he strode through the rows of Argives. When Antenor's elder son Kun, one of the best of the Trojan warriors, saw him, he was filled with intolerable grief for his slain brother. But his sorrow did not lessen his caution. Coming from the side, unobserved by the son of Atreus, he suddenly thrust his spear deep into his arm, close to the elbow. Agamemnon felt a shudder course through him, but would not stop fighting. As Kun tried to drag his brother from the field by the foot, Agamemnon's lance struck him under the shield, and he sank dead over the corpse. Although the warm blood was still flowing from his open wound, Agamemnon went on making havoc among the Trojans with lance, sword, and stones. But when the blood began to clot, a sharp pain warned him to leave the field. Quickly he mounted his chariot and bade the charioteer take him back to the ships. Soon the chariot, in a swirl of dust, was speeding toward the Argive camp. When Hector saw the son of Atreus leave, he remembered the message of Zeus and hurried to the front ranks of Trojans and Lycians, where he cried aloud, "Now take heart, my friends, and hold the Argives at bay. The bravest of the Danai has left the battlefield, and Zeus will give us victory. Forward! Bush among the Argives and your horses, that our glory may be the greater." So cried Hector, and he was the first to sweep on like a tempest. Not long after, 9 Achaean princes and many of the common soldiers had fallen beneath his strokes. He had almost succeeded in driving the enemy back to the ships when Odysseus roused the son of Tydeus. "Is it possible," he cried, "that we have forgotten how to fend off the foe? Come closer, friend, and stand beside me. Let us not live through the disgrace of seeing Hector capture our camp." Diomedes nodded and hurled his dart at Thymbrus of Troy. It shattered his left breast, and he rolled from his chariot and lay in the dust, while Odysseus slew Machaon, his charioteer. On they dashed against the Trojans, and the other Achaeans began to breathe more freely. Zeus, who was still watching from the peak of Ida, held the fortunes of the Argives and Dardanians in balance. But now Hector had recognized the two heroes and stormed straight at them with his battalion. Diomedes only just saved himself and cast his lance at the crest of Hector's helmet. It did, indeed, glance off, but Hector recoiled and fell on one knee. He broke his fall with his right hand, but the world went black before his eyes. By the time the son of Tydeus had run after his spear, the Trojan had swung himself back onto his chariot and escaped death in the throng of his warriors. Sulkily, Diomedes turned to another of the Trojans, felled him to the earth, and prepared to strip him of his armor. Paris took advantage of this opportunity. He hid behind the mount of Ilus and pressed close enough to the stone, shot the kneeling hero in the right heel. The arrow went through the soul and stuck fast. Then, with a laugh, he leaped from ambush and scoffed at his victim. Diomedes looked around, and when he saw who the archer was, he called to him, "So, it is you, the favorite of women. Out in the open you could not prevail against me, and now you boast because you have scratched my foot from behind. But it irks me as little as if a girl, as a mere boy, had struck me." Odysseus, meanwhile, had hastened to the spot and shielded his wounded friend with his body so that Diomedes could draw the arrow from his soul. It was painful, but his fingers were deft and sure. Then he mounted the chariot beside his friend Sthenelus and allowed him to take him back to the ships. Now Odysseus was alone in the midst of his foes, and no Argive ventured to come to his aid. The hero considered whether to flee or remain steadfast where he was. But it quickly became clear to him that he who would win fame in battle must stay to slay or be slain. While he was pondering on this, the Trojans surrounded him, even as hunters and their hounds circle the boar as he rages and whets his tusk. But Odysseus stood firm, and before long 5 Trojans measured their length in the dust. Then came a 6th, Socus, whose brother had just been slain, and cried, "Odysseus! Today you will either go from here with the glory of having killed both the sons of Hippasus and taken their arms as spoils, or die from the thrust of my lance." And with that he shattered the shield of the son of Laertes with his spear and flayed the skin from his ribs. But Athene did not let the point go deeper. Odysseus, who knew very well that the thrust had not been fatal, drew back a few steps, and then lunged at his adversary, who turned to flee. He pierced him in the back between the shoulders, so that the spear came out through his breast, and he crashed to the ground. Not until then did Odysseus draw the lance out of his own wound. When the Trojans saw his blood spurt forth, they thronged closer, and he retreated and called for help 3 times. Menelaus was the first to hear, and said to Ajax beside him, "Let us force our way through the thick of the battle. I hear the cry of Odysseus." Soon the two reached the unflinching fighter, just as he was brandishing his lance against countless foes. But when Ajax held his shield like a towering wall in front of the hero, the Trojans trembled with fear. Menelaus seized this moment to take the son of Laertes by the hand and help him mount his own chariot. Ajax, meanwhile, sprang into the very midst of the Trojans and swept corpses before him, just as a mountain stream swollen in winter uproots the dry oaks and pines. Hector did not see him. He was fighting on the left side of the field, on the shore of the Scamander, and sowing destruction among the youths who pressed with Idomeneus. The warriors would not have yielded to him had not a 3-barbed arrow launched by Paris wounded the right shoulder of Machaon, the great physician of the Argive host. At that, Idomeneus called out in alarm, "Nestor, come and help out your friend into his chariot. A man who cut out arrows and applying soothing salves is worth 100 others." Swiftly, Nestor leaped to his chariots, lifted wounded Machaon beside him, and hurried toward the ships. Hector's charioteer now drew his attention to the confusion in that wing of the Trojan army where Ajax was forcing his way through the foe. In an instant, they were there with the chariot, and Hector began to attack the Argives. He avoided Ajax, for Zeus had warned him not to measure his strength against a man of even greater daring than his own. Zeus also put terror into the soul of Ajax, so that when he saw Hector, he slung his shield over his shoulder, and, fearing for the ships, left the Trojan battalions. Seeing him run, his enemies hurled their lances at the shield hanging down over his back. But whenever Ajax turned his face toward them, they shrank back. When he came to the path that led to the ships, he stopped and fended off his attackers. Their spears either clung in his shield covered with 7 ox hides, or buried themselves in the earth without touching his body. When brave Eurypylus saw him so hard pressed, he hastened to his aid and pierced the breast of Trojan Apasaon. While Eurypylus was taking the armor from his dead foe, Paris shot him in the right thigh, and he retreated to his friends, who protected him with raised lances and shields. In the meantime, Nestor's mares bore him and wounded Machaon out of the battle, and past glowering Achilles, who sat in the stern of his ship and calmly watched the Trojans pursue his countrymen. Not dreaming that his words would bode ill to his friend, he called to Patroclus, "Go ask Nestor whom he is bringing in from the field, for suddenly, I do not know why, my spirit is moved with pity for the Argives." Patroclus did as well as he was bid, and ran to the ships. He reached Nestor just as he had dismounted from the chariot, and he was handing the horses over to Eurymedon, his servant, and entering his house to refresh himself and Machaon with food, and Hecamede served them. When the old man saw Patroclus standing in the door, he rose from his chariot, took him by the hand and urged him to sit with him. But Patroclus refused. "There is no time," he said. "Achilles sent me to see who it was that you brought back from the field with you. Now that I myself have recognized Machaon, versed in the skill of healing, I must hurry back to tell him. You know my friend and how impetuously he is apt to accuse even those who are guiltless." Nestor replied with his tone betrayed a shaken spirit. "Why is the heart of Achilles now troubled in behalf of the Argives, who are wounded and almost dead? All the bravest men lie hurt on the ships. Diomedes struck by an arrow, Odysseus and Agamemnon by spears, and this man I have just brought here, matchless Machaon, by a dart from the bowstring. But Achilles is merciless. Is he going to wait until our ships go up in flame and we bleed to death, one after another? Oh, that I had the strength of my youth or my prime when I came to the house of Peleus as a victor. That was the time I saw your father, Menelaus, and you and the child Achilles." His father, a hero turned gray, urged him always to be the first and foremost, to strive ahead of all the rest, while yours told you to be friend and guide to the son of Peleus, because, though he was stronger, you were the older. Tell this to Achilles. Perhaps now he will listen to your words." So said the old man, calling up fair memories from the time of his own brave youth, until the heart of Patroclus beat fast in his breast. When on his way back he passed the ships of Odysseus, he met Eurypylus, wounded in the thigh by an arrow and painfully limping home from the battle. He called on the son of Menelaus to soothe his pangs with the arts of Chiron the centaur, which Achilles had taught him. Patroclus took pity on him and led him into the house, supporting him under the arm. There he laid him down on an ox hide, and with a sharp knife cut the arrowhead from his thigh. Then he washed the dark blood away with warm water, ground a bitter herb between his palms, and held it to the wound until the blood began to clot. Thus he tended the wounded hero. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.